Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you. So today we're going to be taking yet another look at pure sprites. This was actually the build that I took to MCS week number 4, which I actually just ended up dropping from at the time of recording this. I went 3-3 this week as I did last week. But I was pretty impressed with some of the tech that was in this build. Others, I wonder if it could be a little bit better. So let's go ahead and just start talking. Let's dive right into some of the differences between this and some of my other iterations that I've been testing here. So the main difference is actually going to be the playset of, one of the main differences I should say, is going to be the playset of evenly matched here. So I decided to play 3 evenly matched for the tournament this week because I wanted to have a good board breaker for other Spright decks and also Spright runic decks. And for a while I kind of, debated back and forth on if I wanted like some, power spells like Raigeki or like board breakers, wipes, I guess, like Raigeki, maybe a negate board breaker like Dark Ruler No More or a droplet. I ultimately was about to play Dark Ruler No More and I kind of decided to go with evenly matched, not quite last minute. It was still a pretty still a few days before I locked that decision in, but I decided to go with evenly matched instead because I really just wanted to make sure that I was taking care of not just Spright boards, but runic Spright boards, right? Now, granted, to be fair, like even though this can't hit spell and trap cards, the runic Spright will often just leave their runic fountain anyway, but at that rate, I also figure that evenly matched, like I mentioned in my staples tier list video, might be a bit better than Dark Ruler No More right now because Spright is susceptible to both cards, and the way I see it, you might as well banish their board instead of just negating it. Now, I will say that it's not as great, I've mentioned this before too, it's not as great against decks that have cards that can negate spell and trap cards as part of their main board. Think like Sword Soul putting out Baron, an Adamantipator deck that puts out like a Dragite or something like that. Basically, those kinds of cards are going to be really good against evenly, whereas Dark Ruler No More is going to be better against them. So it's kind of a bit of a debate, I guess. If you really want to tech more against Spright, which I do honestly for this tournament scene, then evenly I think is probably the way to go, but Dark Ruler No More is equally viable and then is also better against non-Spright decks. That said, I don't know actually how I feel about evenly moving forward, because, and this could just be confirmation bias, but during my testing, it came up a few times, and it was pretty good when it did come up, like when I was able to activate it most of the time, but there were some times where it just wasn't enough. And during my actual tournament play in the MCS, I found that to be the case there too. There were actually my last 2 rounds, rounds 5 and 6 before I went X3 and then ended up dropping. I went second and I opened evenly both games, but they weren't enough to break the opponent's board. Now, granted, to be fair, I didn't open any other disruption alongside evenly. I think that definitely would have helped, but the idea, at least in my head, was that evenly by itself would be enough to like break a lot of boards. And I went second against Runic Spright. And yeah, I played evenly, and it just, again, it broke their board all except the fountain, but then they were just able to bounce back anyway. And then Mekk-Knight is what I played round 6. And same thing, like they ended on a typical Mekk-Knight board with like IP, Cyber's Wicked, what is it, they had another card on the field, I can't remember. It wasn't a Lingerimo, but then they had 3 back rows, and same situation. I went evenly, they got rid of everything but their face down super factorial, but the evenly wasn't enough. The super factorial was able to secure them the win from there. So yeah, evenly, I don't know, again, this could be confirmation bias, maybe I do just need to do more testing with it, but it's almost got me wondering a little bit how much I actually value having a going second card like this. But at the same time, it's like, the disrupts, they're really usually not enough. It's so, like, I don't know. I'm almost assuredly weighing too much of my own personal bias into it, but we'll see if that's the case with more testing. I'll continue to test evenlies, I think, for the time being. Another change that I made to the extra deck here, I can't remember if I talked about this before, Daigusto Phoenix. I ended up taking out Downerd Magician in place of Daigusto Phoenix, which, funnily enough, Downerd did not come up at all during testing, like needing Downerd for a second activation, and then it actually came up during the tournament. So, like, again, I'm just trying to figure out if, like, these tournament games are just a small isolated incidence of these techs not being good, or maybe if the techs are just not, or need to be included. Well, Daigusto Phoenix I definitely would include. I think even if I try to put Downerd Magician back in the deck, I might take out the Underworld Goddess if I wanted to put Downerd back in, but Underworld Goddess has been pretty good. That's actually the other new inclusion. We took out the Dark Charmer Gloomy from the extra deck as well, and I haven't missed that at all. I don't think I've made that card like a single... that's not true. I made it like once or twice, but it's not like particularly game-winning in any real situation that I've found. Like, yes, it can bring back Spright Blue or Jet, and then you need a search, but like, usually if you're in a position where you can make a Link 2, you can just make Elf and then like combo anyway, so it's like, there's not really a lot of situations where Dark is good, but Spright Elf isn't. So that's why I decided to take the Dark Charmer out, and like I said, I dropped that for Underworld Goddess, and then Daigusto Phoenix came in instead of the Downard, and I really do like the Daigusto Phoenix. In testing, OTKing with this and Pixies came up, not like all the time, but a lot, like enough that I definitely, moving forward, I think I want both Daigusto Phoenix and Cat Shark in the extra deck, but, yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely, like I said, going to be doing more testing with this build and updating it further for future weeks of competition, so... Alright, let's just go ahead and break down the list card by card here. I'll show you some games from my testing. I think one of these might actually be an MCS game. If I recognize it, I'll point it out, but most of these are going to be games from testing here. So let's go ahead and just break it down card by card, as always as ever. We're playing 3 Swap Frog, 1 Ronintoadin, 3 Maxx, 3 Dark Beckoning Beast, 3 Spright Blue, 3 Spright Jet, 1 Spright Pixies, 2 Spright Red, 1 Spright Carrot, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 1 Opening of the Spirit Gates, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Spright Starter, 1 Spright Smashers, 3 Evenly Matched, and then 3 Infinite Impermanence. That'll round out the main deck. For the extra deck, we're rocking 1 Daigusto Phoenix, 1 number 65 Djinn Buster, 1 Sky Cavalry Centurea, 1 Cat Shark, 1 Onibimaru Soul Sweeper, 2 Gigantic Spright, 1 Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder, 1 Salamangreat Almiraj, 1 IP Masquerena, 2 Spright Elf, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax, and then finally 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. Alright, there is our list. Now let's take a look at some gameplay. Alright, for the first duel here, we're going to be up against Mekk-Knight, which I've been seeing. It's funny, I think now I'm starting to see Sprite's hype die a little bit. Obviously not enough that we're seeing the deck like move down in popularity or like into tier list or anything, but I'm just noticing like more Mekk-Knights and Despian Sword Souls, I guess, as time goes on, starting to come back into the ladder. And again, that could just be my own personal experience, but here I'm going to start with the Dark Beckoning Beast. This is like, honestly, like literally the perfect opening hand to have Beast, Spright Starter, Ash, Called by, and Crossout. Like, I don't think I could literally ask for a better going first hand than this, so definitely going to make good use of that here. Like I said, opening the Beckoning Beast into Spright Blue. Blue is obviously going to fetch the... Or sorry, the starter is going to be into Blue. Beckoning Beast does not search and then summon Spright Blue. That would be far too good if it could, but no. We're just going to go into Jet here. A Gigantic Spright. Jesus, wow, I'm really like... I might be Yu-Gi-Oh'd out for today. I literally just came off of the MCS, and I'm now recording this, so I think my brain might be a little bit frazzled. You have to forgive me here, but this is going to be some fairly standard pure Spright plays here. Yeah, at this point, after getting the Swap Frog out of the deck, now we're going to go for it out of the graveyard with Spright Elf. They do have the Ghost Spell, which honestly isn't really that big of a deal, but I'll call by it anyway, because they clearly haven't had any other responses, and I would like to get some additional like fodder. Like, I guess to be fair, I could have just summoned Ronin, and then used Ronin plus Gigantic, or at this rate, really Ronin plus Jet to make IP, and then pass, and then I pass on Elf, IP, Gigantic, and keep a Called by. The alternative here being that I'm... Oh, but you know what? That's right, I have the opening of the Spirit Gate, so I wanted to save the Spright Jet. So now I get to end on a Djinn Buster. So, okay, I think the Call by was actually worth it here. It's debatable, honestly. You could have not used the Call by there, and I think it would have been fine as well. But because we used it, we have an extra material, an extra Jet, so then we can use that with the Dark Beckoning Beast to bring back with opening and just make Djinn Busters. So opponent's going to try to Small World. I'm going to fire off an Ash to stop it, but they have a Crossout for the Ash Blossom. So in response, I'll just go ahead and pull out the Spright Blue out of the graveyard now with the Elf, or try to anyway, before my opponent drops yet another Ghost Spell. I'm going to Djinn Buster this and negate this one as well, because I want the material in hand, or the card in hand, in case I need to go into Knightmare Unicorn. I actually don't think I was on... Yeah, I wasn't on Underworld Goddess quite yet when I was testing this iteration. The Underworld Goddess was, like, again, not, like, last minute, but a relatively late addition to the deck there. Yeah, I don't know if the opponent is just on like triple Ghost Spell still, but yeah, Ghost Spell, I mean, it's not a bad card by any means, but I definitely think it's kind of subpar in this current meta, so I'm going to use Spright Smashers here to get rid of the Circular as soon as it's on board. That way, you know, when they bring back the Sigma, they can't search for a spell or a trap card. I do still want to be mindful of my opponent having stuff on board. Do I know that their card in hand is, it's Addition, right? Didn't they add it? Hang on, let me take a look here for a second. I could be mistaken. I thought they added... Oh, no. They revealed Addition off of the Small World. That's what it was. So, yeah. I don't know what the opponent's last card is right now, so at that rate, I think what I'm going to do is just get rid of their Sigma, just keep monsters off their board, even if they have an extender like Addition or Subtraction. Like, that by itself doesn't get them anywhere. They do have a back row, but they don't have anything to bring back with Super Factorial, so I'm not concerned about that, you know, in the slightest. That said, I do still want to be a bit mindful of the back row. It could be relevant. So I'm going to start it for blue, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to blue for, yeah, Carrot here. So yeah, again, just make sure we've got that in play. And at this rate, I can just go to battle phase and attack over my opponent. So yeah, for those of you who maybe aren't like as familiar with Pure Spright or have not seen any of the other videos that I put out, I just want to show this game off first as a quick example of what this deck likes to do when it goes first. And like I said, to be fair, in this game we opened kind of just like the best possible opening hand you could get really with this particular build of Beckoning Beast starter, Ash Blossom for Maxx, Called By for another hand trap, and Crossout for yet another disruption. So yeah, we'd love to see it. Now let's go take a look at the next duel here. Alright, this next one is going to be against Runic Spright, which is definitely, you know, the big bad of this format, right? It's interesting. This matchup, it's a lot closer than I think. I don't know. It's a close matchup, honestly. It really kind of depends on who goes first. Honestly, Pure Spright going second into Runic Spright is not in a horrible place. It definitely still prefers to go first, of course, but it really is it's so dependent, in my experience anyway. It's really just so hand dependent on how this matchup goes. Like, I don't even want to necessarily say it is like coin toss dependent. I really think it more comes down to what's in hand. Speaking of what's in hand, I do have evenly matched here, so this is the ideal situation to have an evenly matched. Going second, obviously. Not just going second, but again, against a deck like Runic Spright that, unless they just happen to go out of their way to bait Carrot, they're not going to have a disruption or something that can negate the evenly here, so. But yeah, at this rate, they're just doing their pretty typical Runic Spright plays. They added the Smashers off the Jet, so I guess we should be a little mindful of that. But it's, again, because of the evenly match, I don't really think it's going to end up mattering here. Let's see what they milled here. Looks like they milled evenly Spright Blue and Ash Blossom. Nothing really too concerning there. This deck, like, I do like to check. I mean, obviously you should be checking against every matchup what you mill. But with this deck, it's important to make sure that they don't banish the Ronin. That's really the main card I'm looking for, and I'm checking my banish against Runic as Pure Spright. Most other stuff, like, I mean, maybe the opening of the Spirit Gates in the right, or I guess wrong situation would be enough to shut you down if, like, you're really dependent on getting the second Dark Beckoning Beast in order to make your plays. But that's pretty situational. I'm mostly looking for Ronin here. So yeah, my opponent's inboard is looking, I mean, pretty scary, right? They have multiple monster negates, but this is actually another nice thing about evenly matched is, like, a lot of people right now are playing more around, like, monster negates, and rightly so, right? I think if you're playing Spright, you do want to be ending on red and, like, Djinn Buster most of the time. I don't think it's the right to go out of your way to make Carrot. It's just a matter of we can kind of exploit the fact that Spright typically doesn't end on a way to negate the evenly here, so. Here I think I went to move to the end phase, and that's what caused them, or the end of the main phase rather, and that's what caused them to then play the Runic Tip and then the Spright Elf. This is correct on my opponent's part. They should be playing this stuff to make sure that they are getting it before it gets banished. Now, as expected, they did end up keeping the Runic Fountain here, but as you can see, we managed to hit everything else. Gonna try to use this opening, but they've got an Ash Blossom. That's totally fine. This opening was just bait anyway. Like, obviously, I've got Swap Frog plus, you know, Sprites in hand, so Yeah, this freezing curse is also totally fine. It doesn't actually matter if the swap frog really resolves here. Looks like they still haven't milled the Ronin yet. Actually, looks like they're milling not a lot of like engine stuff. Really, like the only like engine card, even now, that's really milled here is the Spright Blue. Okay, there's the Ronin. I thought they milled the Ronin at some point here. I remember that coming up. See, unfortunately, they did get to cycle again with Fountain, and are continuing to activate more, you know, just Rudic stuff in general, but it's not the end of the world here. Like, they're getting a little bit of advantage, but the other thing to remember about Rudic Spright too is that, like, even if they're ahead, and even if it looks like they're gonna win, it's a slow roll win, and most of the time they do just have, like, enough advantage to make sure you can't really come back at all, but, you know, there are definitely times where, like, even with 1 or 2 cards against, like, Rudic Sprights, like 4 or 5, it's still possible to come back. It's not super likely at that rate, but it is possible. Yeah, because and looking at my graveyard, or me sending the swap with the swap, if I had Ronintoad, if I had the ability to send Ronintoad, and I could have had an extra material on the board here, which definitely would have been very relevant, as I have both Spright Carrot and Smashers, and of course IP Masquerena as well. This opponent's going to draw phase, try to get rid of the Spright Elf. Makes sense, obviously I can't chain it during the draw phase, the effect of Spright Elf, so I'm just going to use the Spright Smashers here, because they're going to try to get rid of the Elf anyway, and I'm going to get rid of their Fountain. But of course, they just, of course, happen to have another one, so I'm going to have to use the Carrot to send IP Masquerena to both negate and destroy this Fountain. Not ideal for me, but it's better than just, you know, being buried under my opponent's card advantage, so here my opponent's going to set 3 and pass. I'm just going to set this Impermanent pass. I don't think, because this got Ash Blossomed, right? So I don't actually have a Dark Beckoning Beast to bring back with the opening of the Spirit Gates, which is definitely rough. Thankfully, I actually set the Impermanent in the right column here to negate something useful. So the Flashing Fire is not going to be able to get rid of my Carrot here. Oh yeah, opponent moving to battle phase. Good instinct though, because I always forget to do that when I'm playing Rudic Spright, so good instinct on the opponent's part. Okay, we did manage to draw a level 2 monster. We definitely like to see it. I'm gonna use those 2 to go into Spright Elf. Now, my opponent's got 3 face down cards, so I don't really expect that this is gonna resolve. And they actually didn't negate the Elf, but they did have a called by for its target, so that is so many, though they don't really have a monster negate. I mean, maybe they do actually, and they're just saving it. It would be smart here to use the call by instead of like a flashing, or a freezing curses rather. It's not Flashing Fire. I think they definitely would have just fired off Flashing Fire if that was the case. So my opponent's turning this Jerry into attack mode. I recognize what's going to happen here. They're going to crash into my Elf, and then use Jerry's effect to destroy my Elf. So definitely want to use the Elf before it dies. I'm going to get back Carrot, because definitely in this matchup, negating the spell and trap cards is the most relevant aspect of it. Managed to rip a starter. Here, it could have been like a lot of level 2 monsters. And here, actually, because my opponent's last card is Ash Blossom, it was actually unlucky that it was the Spright Starter. I guess to be fair, I would have like... Well, I mean, yeah, I would have made Gigantic, or Elf, and then into Gigantic, which Gigantic would have gotten Ash. But, I mean, at the same time, that's, you know, a 3200 beat stick at the least. My opponent decided to destroy the opening here, and they actually milled 2 of my Dark Beckoning Beasts in doing so, so that's actually totally fine for me here. Not hugely concerned about it. What did they use as well? Oh, they activated Runic Slumber, gotcha, okay, yeah, that's fine. End up top decking the 3rd Dark Beckoning Beast, which is great because, you know, as long as I can get a level 2 monster here, I feel like I'm good. And at this rate, I'm actually going to end up going for a Sky Cavalry Centurea. Because I can't really OTK my opponent. I don't think I can anyway here with just 2 level 2 monsters. But I feel like I should be able to. Was I out of something? Yeah, I was out of Spright Elves. That's what it was. Okay, so yeah. Can't really OTK. I mean, maybe I could have. Like, if I got into Gigantic Spright and then... Did I have a blue left? Let me actually see something real quick. I think I might have hastened into going into this Zeus a bit here. Let's see. 1, 2, blue. And I had a Jet. Engrave. Okay, so I had blues and Jets. Did I have starter? No, I didn't have starter left. So it would have been... Right? I don't have starter left? No, I did have a starter left. Okay, so I could have gone... Let me think about this for a second. I could have gone Gigantic Spright with those two. Detached Blue Jet Starter. That definitely should have been enough to OTK, right? Because my opponent was at 56. Yeah, that okay. I should have just gone for the OTK here. Now that I think about it. Yeah, oh no, sorry, not during the end phase, because the back row is live either way, so I figure I'll just wait here. But yeah, during my turn, I'm just going to go ahead and wipe the board with Zeus before smacking them for 3,000. Yeah, Runic Spright, I don't, maybe, except for Starter, like, I don't really think there's any one card they can top deck that'll get them out of this. And sure enough, they didn't really top deck anything super relevant here, so I'm just going to draw, enter battle phase, and end the duel here. Just like so. So, got a couple more games to take a look at. Let's go ahead straight into the next one. This one is yet another game against Runic Spright. This one is actually teching the Raigekis in the main, which is kind of interesting for Runic Spright to be doing. I guess teching them over like Lava Golems. It's interesting. I don't know. It's something we're thinking about, I guess, but I feel like Lava Golems... I can't imagine many scenarios where Raigeki is better than Lava Golem, honestly. Alright, so here I'm going to stir up the opening, even though I've got the Swap Frog, and I'm ultimately going to end up using that as my play. Just to see if I could bait out like an Ash Blossom or something. They do have a Maxx, but I've got the call by for it, so that's totally cool. I've also got the Triple Tactics Talent. My opponent really should have fired this call by off during the draw phase. I've talked about this a lot, but Talent is a very, very prominent tech card right now. And for that reason, you should be definitely using monster effects, quick monster effects during the draw phase when possible. So it went by kind of quickly there, but my opponent's hand was a Maxx, Ash Blossom, and then Sprights Blue and Carrot. I'm going to put back the Ash Blossom here because, you know, of course my opponent's not going to be able to use another Maxx this turn, and the Ash Blossom can potentially stop me from comboing. It is worth noting, though, that I am going to have to think about the Maxx, and then also the fact that my opponent's got Spright plays here. So this is actually a combo that I failed to show off in my combo video that I really should have, but if you open just Swap Frog, that's actually enough for plays if you have Salamangreat Almiraj in your extra deck. As I'm doing here, you just summon Swap, send Ronin, link Swap away for Almiraj, bring back the Ronin by banishing the Swap, use those to make Spright Elf. Now Elf and Ronin are going to go into Gigantic, and then we can go Gigantic for Blue, Blue for Jet, and so on and so forth. It's a little bit weird because you do have to, like, typically you want to do it in the other order, right? On turn 1 you want to make Gigantic Spright and then use that to make Elf instead of using Elf to make Gigantic, but again, it's because we had to do it this way. I mean, we are actually still able to make a Spright Elf here, and I'm actually going to do just that. I don't like going into both of my Spright Elves on turn 1, but I'll still do it to end on a Spright Elf on turn 1. And I can even end on the IP Masquerena here as well, and then have the Spright Elf bring back Spright Red potentially. Alright, so yeah, upon the normal summon of Carrot, I'm just going to target the blue, bring that back. Actually, yeah, I don't know why I didn't bring back the red there. It's kind of interesting. Oh, I guess, yeah, because we're just going to go for the Knightmare Unicorn, right? Because my opponent's got Maxx, Spright Blue, and an Unknown. Like, we're just going to go for Knightmare Unicorn, shuffle the Carrot back here. And they did actually have another way to go into another level 2 monster, so I was about to say hope they don't have another way to go into a level 2, but they did, so it's not the best in the world for us, but at the very least they're not going to get to battle here, so it's not like we're dead this turn. But this is going to be pretty inconvenient. I guess, I probably should have just done what I was talking about and just added red, but I have this Nibiru in hand, although I think, to be fair, I'm about to use this Nibiru on my opponent. No, I'm not, because this Gigantic Spright is summon number 4, right? No, it's not. I am going to use Nibiru. Okay. I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think Nibiru is still great in this format against Spright decks. Like, yeah, on their turn 1 board, they're not going to play into it, but, like, on a lot of other boards, on just about any other board, it's not uncommon for Sprights to have to go 5 summons into or before Gigantic there. I don't really want to take any chances with this Maxx, honestly. I'm just going to sack, I'm just going to sack the monster with red. Plus, I don't really need, like, this Jet on the board. I can just win anyway, so I'm just going to get rid of the Jet to not have to deal with the Maxx. Alright, we've got one more game. Let's just go ahead and go straight into it. Okay, so yeah, I was looking over, and this was actually a game from MCS Week 4, Swiss, that snuck in here to my replays. I guess I ended up saving it, but that's fine. This is actually this is actually the best game I played this week, honestly, so I'm glad I get to show it. And yeah, you can tell it's in a duel room because we can see my opponent's hand here. Our opponent is going to be on Dragon Link, as you can see, and they opened up Joel and Lockbird, which is a pretty good tech right now. And it's definitely going to have to make me adapt to the way I play this hand out. Yeah, they're going to Joel as soon as I opening. To be fair, I got pretty lucky here opening as many Spright names as I did. If I didn't open this many Spright names, I think this Joel would have been a huge problem. Or at least a bigger problem than it was, but because I have just a lot of extenders and gas in my hand, I think this is going to end up being fine. So, I'm going to summon the Beckoning Beast, and then special the blue. Don't get a search for blue, obviously, because of the Joel and Lockbird. So I'll just go for Gigantic and get a Swap Frog. I can still send cards from deck to the graveyard and summon them from the graveyard, or from the deck rather, and the graveyard, but Joel is just going to keep me from adding cards from deck to hand. But fortunately, I don't need to do that in order to keep comboing here. There's not a lot of hands, I don't know about not a lot of hands, but I should say there are a lot of hands where that wouldn't be the case, so I would need to search. So, again, I got a little bit lucky opening as much gas as I did here. But as you can see, we're able to end on not just our typical Spright Elf plus IP plus Ronin, but we actually had the materials to be able to make Djinn Buster too. That, along with Imperm, is going to be very nice. The Disruption, I think, is definitely the name of the game in this current meta. Like, being able to have access to it is pretty important. So, we're just going to fire off a Grass. I'm going to chain Elf, and sure enough, they end up top decking the Sideframe Gear Gamma. Even in match when I obviously couldn't see their hand, I figured this was a top deck because they obviously would have used it last turn if they'd had it. I'm going to use the Djinn Buster here on this Gamma. It's not going to, like, they're going to be able to use it later potentially, but I wanted to make sure that I got this, or rather, I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose my Spright Elf, because, you know, without a card in hand to send off Knightmare Unicorn, I'm thinking that I'm probably going to need to go into the Underworld Goddess in order to use IP as removal this turn. Also, this is very important here. So the effect resolved, and Spright Elf allowed me to search Spright Blue, but I'm actually not going to activate the effect of Spright Blue. The reason I'm not doing that is because if I do, then my opponent gets to activate Gamma, because Gamma is not once per turn, so they get a special Gamma and Driver, and then they get to go into the level 8 Chaos Ruler for free. And I know they're on Dragon Link, obviously, now, because I can see their graveyard, and I definitely don't want them to have a free Chaos Ruler, so I'm actually not activating Spright Blue's effect on purpose here for that reason. Now, looks like they're going to have to use the Starliege Safer to get out the Levianeer. Thankfully, I've got the Imperm for the Levianeer, so I was able to use my Djinn. That's why I was able to use my Djinn Buster more freely against that Gamma as well. See, they got the Chaos Space for the draw. Looks like it just ended up being another Abster Router. And then, yeah, as soon as they normal summon the Rocket Tracer, I decided to just get rid of it. I'm just going to go in for the Underworld Goddess, because I'm thinking they were probably going to go... My thought process, anyway, was that they were probably going to go for a Striker Dragon, and then search, what is it, the field spell, Boot Sector Launch. And then at that rate, it would have been, like, too late. So I want to hit this Rocket Launcher as soon as it's normal, or sorry, Rocket Tracer, as soon as it's normal summoned. And looking at my opponent's hand, I'm super glad I did this, because they had the Abster Routers special in their hand. They also had the Recharger, so the Boot Sector Launch would have been very relevant and very live. But now they're just going to have to crash into my White Woman Jump Scare with their Levianeer, and then pass back to me. So here I top decked Called by the Grave, which does not look like a good top deck, especially knowing that my opponent's got Gamma in hand. Because, you know, Called by Gamma doesn't go to the graveyard, so Called by can't stop it. But when my opponent activated Grass earlier, the more keen eyed among you might have noticed that they actually do have a Gamma in their graveyard that they milled. So because they end up milling a Gamma, this Called by is actually now live against it. And for that reason, I don't really have to worry too much here about the disruption. At this rate, you know, they had 3 unknowns plus the Gamma, so there is a chance they could have had another disruption, but they didn't use anything on my turn 1. So I figured we were probably going to be safe to just go for the OTK here. And that is in fact going to be what we're going to do. Like I said, we're going to call by the Gamma that's in grave, so negate the one that is in hand. Spright Blue is going to get Jet, then we're going to Jet for Starter. Starter can then go for Red. to have that monster negate up. Then we're going to overlay the blue and the Spright Elf into the Gigantic Spright. And with the Gigantic Spright, I guess we're just going to summon the Swap Frog here. I don't think it... Well, I have a Ronin engraved, so maybe it might matter a little bit, but... I definitely don't want to activate Swap's effect, because that's my last Swap Frog, and I would have to send it from the field to the graveyard. But this is a pretty standard OTK with sprites, using the Cat Shark to get 8,100 points of damage, and that will secure me this win. Alright, so there are those games. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.